and welcome to the show. Now, if you are looking for an incredibly fast car that is both road legal but very good around the track, you are spoilt for choice. There are plenty out there, from the likes of the Porsche, the 911 GT3 RS, Ferrari have their options, Lamborghini have their options. There are, I say, plenty of them around, of course, all very, very expensive and everything, but there are plenty of cars that you can both drive on the road and have an awful lot of fun around a circuit. But there is one in particular that is rather mighty. This is the Aston Martin Valkyrie, and admittedly it is barely road legal, but it can be driven on a road, and it can be driven around a circuit very, very fast indeed. And most importantly, when it comes to Forza, when you drive the car from standard with no upgrades, no modifications whatsoever, the vehicle starts on sport tyres, which would essentially be your semi-slick, barely road legal type of tyre, not full-on racing slicks, which got me thinking, what could this car in sort of road specification beat in terms of race cars? Because slicks are so very, very strong in Forza. Could this Valkyrie really beat a whole plethora of classic and not all that classic race cars? So naturally, we had to go and find out. For this test, we would head to the Watkins Glen circuit. First, going up against a Lotus Formula 1 car. Yes, full-on Formula 1 car. Now, the Formula 1 car is considerably down on power, under 500 horsepower, and that the Valkyrie has 1,100. The Valkyrie has a lot of power, but the F1 car is lighter and has a lot more grip through the corners. You come up the hill, you can see Megan, who was driving the Lotus here, was closing, and then we're on a straight. And then the Aston Martin does what it does so incredibly well, and that is bugger off into the distance. My God, is the Valkyrie quick. Now, okay, yes, this is an older Formula 1 car, of course. The speed at which the Valkyrie has vanished off up the road, even through this long corner, the Lotus could not really do anything. Even with better tyres, again, the Valkyrie is just gradually running away at this point. And as the race would progress onwards, the Lotus was not going to be catching. The first half of the circuit, certainly down towards the bus stop, you know, the Valkyrie's power and straight line speed is immense. But when we get to this section, this starts getting twisty. This starts getting technical. And for a car not on slick tyres at the end of the day, this is the section where the race cars are likely to start closing in. But not quite here. For all of its grip in the corners, as you can see, the Lotus just did not have an answer. The Valkyrie was maybe a tiny bit slower through some of these corners, but so much faster accelerating. Even with me making a bit of a mess of the final corner with the S. It wasn't the best run ever with the Valkyrie. It was not going to get caught. It would be the Aston Martin that would win the first round. Okay, the classic Formula 1 car, that couldn't quite match it. What about something modern? Admittedly, a little bit different. This is a Trans Am car, the Cadillac Trans Am. We've got more power in this. We've got 850 horsepower, but it is heavier than the Valkyrie here. And through turn one, it sort of closes a bit under brakes, and as you turn in, but the Valkyrie's just gone. As soon as it can get on the power, the Valkyrie is vanishing again down the straight, and this time the Cadillac could not close whatsoever on the run up the hill. And by the time we get towards the bus stop, the Valkyrie's almost at the bus stop by the time the Cadillac has even got onto this straight. It is unbelievably fast down those straights, and the Cadillac, while the slick tyres are good and everything, it's not enough. It's not enough to do anything about that Aston Martin. As we come out of the sort of carousel bit, the Valkyrie's just gone. It's just gone. The Trans Am car couldn't get anywhere near close to the Valkyrie. You could just about see the Aston in the distance, but it was never catching. So we're going to have to get a whole lot more serious. What about the Ferrari F333? A very interesting sort of, I say, classic race cars, late 90s race car. This one is lighter than the Valkyrie by a little bit. Has less power though, 650 horsepower in this compared to the 1,100 in the Aston Martin. And a familiar sight was going on. The Ferrari would close a little bit through turn one, could be braver under brakes through there, and then we get onto the straight, and then the Aston Martin just vanishes. The Valkyrie hits about an aero wall at around 200 miles an hour. It doesn't really want to go much faster than that down the straight, but it gets there so insanely fast. The Ferrari, though, closes through the bus stop. It's certainly a lot closer than we had been seeing from cars so far, and we dive into these next corners. The Ferrari can carry a lot more speed through here. It can carry a lot more mid-corner speed, but then we're into another acceleration zone. Even though these aren't crazy long straights for the vehicles, the Aston is so quick. The Ferrari's difficulty is, even if you did catch up to the back of the Valkyrie, how on earth would you pass it? You'd spend all your time through the corner catching, and then the second you got out the other side, the Aston would put the power down, and it would just be gone. Again, bear in mind, Ferrari has got big, much grippier tyres on that car. All the race cars were running on the soft compound tyres, so they have as much grip as possible. You can see Ollie was pushing the absolute limits of the Ferrari, sliding its way out of that corner. But it was not able to do anything about the Aston Martin. It was much closer, though. It was much closer this time around. The Ferrari had put up a good show, but the Aston Martin would take victory. What about a Le Mans winner? We had got up next the Bentley Speed 8. It is around the same weight as the Valkyrie. Again, we've got that sort of 630, 650 horsepower region. And once more, as we howl our way up the hill here, the Aston would do its party piece. This speed is staggering. Again, remember, this car is on road tyres. It is flat out all the way up the hill. It moves about quite a lot. It's rather disconcerting driving the Valkyrie at times through here, because it does move a fair bit. But the Bentley, nope, couldn't do it. The Bentley could not do it. In fact, Bentley was a little bit further back in all of this. I mean, it's still certainly within visual range, but all of the grip the Bentley had through the corners was no match for the might of the Aston Martin. Okay, we're going for something a little bit more modern here. What about the Cadillac? This is the DPI Cadillac. Again, we've got the car weighs about the same as the Valkyrie, about half the horsepower going on, so the straight line speed difference is understandable. But admittedly, at the end of the day, it's not, it's not that difficult to find cars that'll go quicker in a straight line than these race cars. They're not built for sheer straight line speed. And certainly the Cadillac was a little bit closer than we had seen going down this straight. But again, even with its grip, it just couldn't match the Aston Martin. Even with its, its ultimate grip in some of these corners would be greater than that of the Valkyrie. Its Cadillac ran a little bit wide. It wasn't it wasn't completely overpowering, and it would be an impressive victory for the Aston Martin. So the DPI car, that couldn't do it. What about a BMW? The V12 LMR. Again, car weighs less than £2,000. We're seeing quite a lot of these sort of around the £2,000 mark, around the 630, 650 horsepower mark, which is exactly the same as the BMW found itself in, and the Aston Martin was doing its favourite thing, which was embarrassing race cars in a straight line. Again, it's gone. It got a good halfway down the straight. In fact, this one considerably faster than the... or got further away, I should say, than the Cadillac did. The BMW, though, was good in the midsection of the lap. It was quick through the twisties and turnies, and that time that was lost through the first sector was gradually reeled back in. But much like we'd seen with the Ferrari earlier, it wasn't enough, or the Bentley even, it wasn't enough. It would close up a little bit, and it's quick through the final corner, back onto a straight, and off goes the Aston Martin again. So, BMW couldn't do it. What about a glorious rotary? The Mazda 787B, a wonderful sounding machine, a wonderfully crazy machine. Both would launch once again from the rolling start down towards the first corner. It'd be the Mazda, the first car to actually draw alongside with the Valkyrie. Agnieszka Sente got brave enough to have a go and has the grip to have a go into turn one, and then the Aston Martin does its party piece as we run up the hill. A little bit of wobbling from the Valkyrie, but it's just gone once again. Absolutely flew off down towards the bus stop, and the Mazda not quite close enough. A similar kind of story we saw in this one as it was to the BMW. As it gets into the twisty stuff, it would close a little bit. A big slide, actually, for the Mazda in the background there. It would close a bit through the twisty stuff, but nowhere close to enough. But we did have a car almost find a way past the Valkyrie, even if it struggled a little bit towards the end. I think the Mazda might have brushed the wall out of the final corner. So, 787B, that couldn't do it. So we're having to get more extreme here. What about the Mercedes, the Sauber C9? We've got to 750 horsepower in the race car here. Slick tyres, you know, far better compounded tyres. Okay, much older car, but yeah, far better tyres on this one. Weighs less than 2,000 pounds again. The two will launch their way towards turn one. Would the Sauber be close enough to have a look? Not quite. The Valkyrie still fast enough accelerating away. So we're doing a rolling start because all the cars, well, to give all the high-geared race cars, you know, a fair shot at getting off the line and everything. Some of them with like Le Mans gearing and everything, very long gears. So we're doing a rolling start. Keep everything fair. Still, the Valkyrie would power its way towards the first corner and power its way down the straight. The Sauber, though, was closer. Again, a lot of straight line speed in this vehicle. It was able to attack the bus stop, and it's not a million miles away from the Valkyrie as we head through the sort of carousel corner. Still not within overtaking range. It takes a good, I say, half a lap almost to regain the ground lost down that straight. But this is the time where it's concerning. If you're in the Aston Martin, you're looking behind because you know that Sauber is going to carry a lot more speed through these corners, and it was right there as we head up the hill, but it cannot match the Aston Martin's acceleration. Remember, this is a 750 horsepower, fantastically mad Group C car, and the Valkyrie vanishes away from it down a straight to the point where the Mercedes is not close enough to have a look. Again, another short acceleration zone, still nowhere close enough for that Mercedes to be having a look down here. And again, out towards the final couple of corners, the Mercedes is very close. It's the closest we'd seen to a car being able to beat the Valkyrie, but it was not going to be able to find a way past. Final corner, it'll carry momentum through here, but the Aston Martin, as soon as you can get on the power for the Aston Martin, it is gone, and the Valkyrie would win once more. The Aston Martin, this is the AMR2, surprisingly had higher PI than that of the C9, but there we go, £2,000, again 670 horsepower in this one. It's Aston Martin versus Aston Martin. The AMR1 not close enough to really be taking a look through the first corner here, although plenty of cars haven't been able to, and we're back to a familiar pattern of the Valkyrie has gone again by the time we've got to the hill. I mean, you could see the Valkyrie being a bit iffy over the curves as you run up the hill. It's sketchy and alarming, but it can do it. The Aston Martin, the AMR1, sort of held it through the bus stop, and I mean, it's kind of a similar run to that BMW really, or to the 787B. It would close in places, but was never really under as much pressure against that as it had been against the Sauber, the AMR1. Just not really there to threaten it. Now we're really starting to bring out the big guns here. Up next, the Porsche, the 962. Gets 750 horsepower, under £2,000. Has a look into turn one. It can get alongside, bumps the curb, and ends up in the side of the Valkyrie as we head out of that first corner. And now we begin to run up the hill, and this is where the Porsche's party piece kicks in. Dear God, as the Porsche got a lot of straight line speed, the first car to actually chase down the Valkyrie, heading towards the bus stop, and the Porsche would take the lead under brakes, and this is where things get very difficult for the Aston Martin. Its party piece, its blinding straight line speed, had been nullified by the fact the Porsche could do it as well, and now we get into the twisty stuff. And the Porsche has got more grip in that too. The 962 has huge amounts of straight line speed. I'm guessing this is running like a low aero package or something, like the sort that it would have run at Le Mans, for an example. And it had tremendous straight line speed. It had enough speed to overcome the Aston Martin. And then when we get into the twisty bits, where the other race cars had been far, or a lot of them had been faster than the Aston, but they just couldn't match the speed, and the Porsche could. Interestingly, off the line, the initial acceleration still went the way of the Valkyrie. It was still quicker down towards the first corner, but ultimate top speed, the Porsche has it. This car capable, according to the game, about 240 miles an hour. As I said, the Valkyrie runs out of speed at about 200. I actually lit the rear tyres up, got a bit sideways and clonked the wall in the Aston. So me pushing desperately to try and catch up to Ara's Porsche, and I was a little bit further back than the Valkyrie would have been, with a couple of silly errors from me trying to catch it. But the 962 would be the first vehicle to claim a victory in this. What about a Nissan? This, the R91 CP. We're again back to the 650 horsepower, £2,000 region. The Valkyrie leading the way as we would run up the hill, and a little bit more normal service would resume here as we come over the crest, and the Nissan is nowhere to be seen. Off goes the Aston Martin on its merry way, well out of the firing line, and no chance for a Nissan to be having a look. And while this thing was mighty grippy in the corners, as we had seen with the last few cars, I say mighty grippy as it gets sideways, had been quick through the corners, it still just wasn't enough. It wasn't gaining enough time through there. Actually ends up pushing a bit too hard. I think ended up a smidge wide there, but yeah, it wasn't really going to challenge the Valkyrie. It was too fast in a straight line, and Nissan could not make up the times in the corners. Now, we have to go to something a little bit more modern up next. This is the GTR LM Nismo, the crazy front-wheel drive contraption here. 900 horsepower at about £2,000, so it's not that far away stats-wise to the Valkyrie. Will have a lot more drag and a lot more downforce, but don't forget, it's got slicks. The Valkyrie does not. I mean, they are the borderline, I would imagine, the semiest of semi-slicks that's just about road legal, but Nissan has all of that. And I mean, the Valkyrie's doing the Valkyrie things. It's got away again down the straight. I mean, the Nissan not the furthest back that we had seen cars, but again, from that shot that we like to see, the Valkyrie's only just about in frame as we head into the bus stop, and the crazy front-wheel drive Nissan contraption would close in as we go through the twisty sections, but much the same story as we had seen with a bunch of other cars. Is it would get close, and it would definitely close in around these couple of corners, but never really realistically be in a position to get past the Aston Martin. I'd have to make a big mistake with the Aston Martin for the Nissan to find a way past, and, well, I didn't. Now, we go to something really quite wacky. This is the Toyota Eagle Mark III. 660-odd horsepower, 1,800 pounds. Stat-wise, doesn't look like anything crazy impressive, but it has a crap ton of downforce, as you can see. And sure enough, it was mighty fast through the corners. In fact, it got a little bit stuck behind the Valkyrie, and this is where I was going to have to deploy the Aston Martin's speed, really, and all my defensive driving. That Toyota has absolutely no straight line speed because it has all of the downforce you could imagine. I mean, you can see the size of the gap. It's one of the biggest gaps we had going into the bus stop, but I knew this was going to be tough because when we come through corners like this, that really is a corner you have to think about in the Valkyrie. That Toyota is a monster. That huge gap that I had down that straight, yeah, that's gone. The Toyota Eagle is there. It's right on the bumper, but once more, the Valkyrie can use its straight line speed to be out of range. Into the next corner, we drive a normal 9. The Toyota is looking out wide, and it will draw alongside, but it's not going to matter too much. The Aston Martin Power once again will fire it towards the next corner, and Speedies would have to try and get creative to find a way past, because I can defend a little bit and then just use all of the straight line speed on the exit, and the Toyota was unable to look for a way past. Now, admittedly, at this point, I am holding the Toyota up slightly. In terms of lap times, that is slightly faster, but it could not find a way to overtake very, very quick into the penultimate corner, but there's an Aston in the way. There's no way through at this stage, and as we round the final corner, it's still trying to look for a way past. Doesn't matter. The Aston Martin will outrun it to the line and claim another victory. We go back to a modern vehicle up next. It's the Audi R18. Now, all-wheel drive in this. All-wheel drive on slick, 700 horsepower. Again, around that £2,000 mark. And all-wheel drive, not so important for a rolling start here. And as you would expect, off goes the Aston Martin. I mean, the Audi's certainly no slouch in a straight line. It's not slow in a straight line. But it's also no match for the Aston Martin. So once again, it was going to be a case of could that R18 reel in the Aston. I mean, as you went through the bus stop, the Valkyrie is not even in camera shot. That's the size of the gap that the Audi was going to have to reel in, but it's this sort of section here where it is incredibly strong. Through that carousel corner, incredibly strong. Down here, very strong. And it does have the advantage a little bit, I say a little bit, in some of these corners, you're not going to be sliding the Audi. You can boot it and it will grip, it will fire itself out of the corner. And it was definitely right there. It was starting to concern me how much it's reeling in through these corners. I'm not going to have a trouble down here. The Audi was too far back to be having a dive, so I could just take a sort of normal line through that one. And again, the Valkyrie was doing what it had done all time, just accelerate well enough to stay out of position on the Audi with huge grip and acceleration down here, and sends it to the outside of the penultimate corner. A little too defensive from the Valkyrie would be enough to let it pass. It'll carry the speed through the final corner, but it's got to get to the line, and the Aston Martin is closing, and it was incredibly close, but not quite. Not quite enough for the Valkyrie. That was the difference between the two. And bear in mind how fast these cars are travelling. It was a tiny failure, about 10th and a bit something there between the two cars. It was a monstrous, silly little error by me in some ways. I was a little too defensive through the penultimate corner, and Brazen just carried so much speed. So much more speed than I was expecting almost in the Audi. Sweeped around the outside, good pass, and it did just beat the Aston Martin. We go to Toyota next, the TSO 40 hybrid thing. That's the one. We've got, again, 800 or so horsepower, 2,000 pounds, another all-wheel drive car running in this. Once again, a similar story off the line as we had seen. The Valkyrie with a good launch. The Valkyrie able to get through turn 1. If it could get through turn 1 without really being compromised on a little bit bumpy up the hill, it could just, build that gap down the straight. And again, the similar story that we had seen. This technically road car would decimate things down the straight, and the Toyota, it would close, but it couldn't get as close. It didn't get as close as the Audi did through here. I mean, I was a little bit aware of what could happen in towards these final couple of corners. It definitely was. I mean, it was right there. I had a slightly cleaner run this time around. I mean, we're all starting on cars with very cold tyres through here. It was easy to make little errors, but no, it was a good run. The Toyota got right there, but also couldn't find a way past. The final challenger in all of this would be a Ginetta. This an LMP1 Ginetta, I believe. This is the G60 LTP1. Again, 700 horsepower, just under 2,000 pounds. Rear-wheel drive, huge amounts of downforce, huge amounts of grip are going to be available in that car. Basically every single run, it would be the Valkyrie. A couple of cars got close to passing through turn 1, but certainly the really high downforce cars were struggling. They just couldn't pick up the speed in time to get through turn 1, even though they could beat me later on. And as we roar our way up the hill, once again, it would be the Aston Martin that would be running away. I knew this one was going to be tough, though. We knew this sort of one was going to be difficult. The Ginetta, not the furthest back either, as we head through this section. Huge amounts of grip in a car that wasn't quite as slow down the straight as some, but it was already there. It was already there, already looking menacing. In fact, closer than quite a few cars had been down this section. I tried to carry speed into this corner, but it was asking a little bit too much of the Aston Martin. The Ginetta would find a way past, but we did have another hill. We did have another acceleration zone. And as it slid its way slightly, going on the exit, there was an opportunity. The Aston Martin stood as well. The huge speed of the Valkyrie to draw alongside and be incredibly brave under brakes. It was we got it stopped. We didn't go off the circuit. A little bit of a block pass. Made it stick. Made it count where we needed to. Still 3 corners to go. Still potentially vulnerable. Ginetta's looking around the outside. The Ginetta slides. The Aston Martin got a little bit squirrely on the way into that corner. 2 more turns left for the Valkyrie, aware of the dangers that could be posed through here. Still, the Ginetta cannot get alongside. It couldn't sweep round the outside, couldn't dive to the inside, and now it's stuck behind the faster accelerating Aston Martin, and the Valkyrie would win again. In all these race cars, only 2 could beat the Valkyrie. Now, admittedly, I would say the Toyota was definitely faster, the Eagle was definitely faster over the course of the lap, and the Ginetta, I took a brave overtake. It probably would have been quicker over a lap, but actual racing situations, they both really struggled to beat that Valkyrie. The Porsche was actually really impressive. I think it's the oldest car here as well, I think it's amongst the oldest cars here challenging, and that huge amount of straight line speed was enough to get it past and to keep it ahead of the Aston Martin. It was the only car that chased the Valkyrie down in a straight line. Okay, it makes sense with a lot of the other stuff being crazy high downforce and whatnot, but that was a mighty impressive showing from the 926. And I mean the Audi, okay, sure, yeah, perhaps not a big surprise to see the R18 find a way, but it was an excellent pass by Brazen around the outside, and me being caught slightly unawares. I feel like I could have maybe defended from it a little bit better at that point. But that goes to show just how ridiculously fast the Valkyrie is. Now, of course, look, this is a game at the end of the day. Whether the Valkyrie would actually be able to do these sorts of lap speeds in real life, I don't know. We're just playing around with what we've got here. It is impressive. It's funny to see the road car being able to compete with this huge selection of amazing, amazing classic historic race cars. And the Valkyrie in the game, well, of course, the stats, the real car, we don't really know. It's sort of getting close to maybe being ready at some point in the future. The Valkyrie in the game is very, very light, which the road car probably wouldn't end up being. But still, yeah, it's such a ridiculous car. For a vehicle on sport tyres and technically road legal, to be able to do the sort of things that it was doing is astonishing. I mean, I knew it would be quick. I just didn't think it would be as quick as it was. It's ridiculous. But this was really good fun. It was really good fun. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a different format going on in this one. Thank you all very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.